Due to the recent internationalization of the Inderes Board of Directors, we will continue with the question and answer session in English. As I just mentioned in Finnish, the audience may still present their questions to the board in Finnish, and I will do my very best in translating those questions to English. Let's see how it goes. Before we give the floor to our shareholders, who will hopefully have many questions to ask from the board, let's start by asking a couple of warm-up questions to the newest members of the board of directors. Let's start with Joachim. So, as mentioned during the AGM, you have history with Inderes, having been a member of the board approximately 10 years ago. Looking from your perspective, how has Inderes changed as a company during those years?
Well, I would say, in a way you could say that everything has changed, and in a way you could say that nothing has changed. In a way, if you looked at the figures that Mikael was presenting before, I think when I was leaving the board in 2015, turnover was less than 2 million euros. Now it's 17 million euros and growing tenfold. I remember sitting in a small office building. I think there were 10 employees sitting there, now 120 employees. The business model was focused on pure equity research. Now we have a multitude of services and it's growing. And then the focus was on the Finnish market, and now we're going more and more Nordic. So that's why everything in a way has changed and is developing. But on the other hand, I would say that the core of the company has remained intact as I see it. It's based on very strong values. There's a strong company culture in place. There's a drive, an innovation, energy in the company, as I was saying before, and I think those have remained unchanged. So I think it depends on how you want to look at it, but that's how I would approach it.
Helena, based on your experience in investor relations in Sweden, how do you see Inderes positioning and what opportunities it may have?
So first of all, I think that there is a big opportunity. The question is how to take it on. The starting point compared to in Finland, where it's grown organically, it started from equity research. In Sweden, it's today mainly through financial hearings, very big on the events and digital side, but really not known in the other areas. And the idea with the spin wheel and the different parts that feed each other, I think we have to decide in what order we do it and what is most important in order to get to movement. And I think that's really the first task, sort of about designing that strategy for Sweden. So it's a very different starting place. The opportunity is there, I'm sure.
Well, how do you both see investor relations and shareholder engagement developing?
I think the trend is clear. It's growing. It's becoming more and more interaction. You need to be more and more transparent. You need to communicate more openly all the time. And I think Inderes is leading the way in that way. We are showing the market which way to go.
I agree. I mean, it's growing. The companies have to communicate more. They have to be more transparent. The audiences, the shareholders are more knowledgeable. I think, again, if we do a touch of Sweden, there isn't an independent voice in the same way. So it's more, a lot of the information that retail investors consume may be more either sort of from individuals or from the likes of Dagens Industri that are actually quite strong in driving their own ideas. So I think that the environment is different and has become more opinionated in a way. So that's something to look into.
How does the rest of the board see this topic?
We already have some early indications on how equity research is picking up in Sweden. Well, good news is it is picking up. The other news, I don't know if it's bad, but the market is very different, and I think it seems that the Swedish market is used to different kind of equity research than the very independent one we developed over here. And some clients even seem to be shocked that they can't control on what we're saying and what we're writing, so they don't really get fully the independent part of the equation. But like Mikael said in his part, that's something that we obviously cannot. We need to stick to our principles there.
How do you guys see it? Should we adapt to the market since it's different, or should we try to introduce a new concept in Sweden? Or?
Yes, yeah.
I'm taking over the moderator's role here.
I think Mikael published the April Fool's Day posting that now we have this silver and gold and platinum. If you pay 40,000, you can write the recommendation and target price yourselves. But, yes. No, but I think that was a good prank, and we need to communicate to the Swedish market that what the independence is all about. It may be an uphill because many of the clients are used to buying advertorials and think that this is marketing and this is advertising. But I hope there will be investors that realize that, have you seen Inderes? They actually know the stuff. They actually want to say what they say. They say what they think is fair, and I hope that the investors find that valuable.
What about our shareholders? Would you have any questions to the board?
Kiitos, Matti Ranta, yhteisön jäsen. Laitetaan suomeksi tällä kertaa, niin Eero saa käännöshommaa. Kysymys ehkä ensisijaisesti uusille hallituksen jäsenille ja myöskin Mikaelille. Nyt kun meillä on hallituksen jäsenet paikalla, niin mikä tarkkaan ottaen on hallituksen rooli kansainvälistymisessä? Mitä hallitus voi tehdä ja tulee tekemään, jotta kansainvälistyminen etenee mahdollisimman sujuvasti?
Okay, so what exactly is the board's role in the internationalization process of Inderes, and what will the board do, I suppose, to advance this?
Well, maybe I can start briefly, and then if anybody wants to continue. What the board in general is doing, we're not managing Mikael and Mikko, we're not managing the company. Obviously, there's a 10% element of corporate governance and certain legal things we need to monitor. But in general, we're supporting, we're trying to coach, we're trying to challenge in a positive way, we're trying to give ideas, we're trying to contribute into the strategic thinking. When the Nomcom started to work, and by the way, Mauri that presented the question is from the Nomcom, we realized that if we're going to be a Nordic company, we need to look as a Nordic company, we need to have an international board as well. And I'm very proud to see today that we have expanded into that direction with Helena joining. We all play a role in the board the way we feels natural, so we'll have to see. We haven't had the first meeting yet. Obviously, we're very happy if, for instance, Helena can extend her business card Rolodex and bring some contacts, some door openings into our team when it comes to equity research, when it comes to selling other products in Sweden or other Nordic markets. But obviously, it's totally voluntary and what feels natural.
I think it's about bringing perspectives, having ideas, being part, building, challenging, asking questions, contributing, opening doors if possible. Board level, not operational.
We might sometime in the future also need to try to create a new ambition level for the company. In the 10 years or more in the board, there have been times when we've been trying to kick the management to do something internationally. There have been times when we have to tell that you don't actually have yet anything remarkable that could be sold. But at the moment, I would say that it's a really good position for the company to be in, because there's an indigenous drive to internationalize. So in that sense, the board is not useless, but doesn't really have a lot to do at the moment, because the organization is really driving for internationalization, at least in the Nordics. Later it might change. We will need to see the world, but time is not now.
Thank you, Matti, for the great question. It's actually quite topical for me personally because after this event, I'm flying to Oslo, where there's an event where there's a lot of board professionals, and I was invited there to give a speech on what has been the role of board at Inderes. And while preparing my notes for that presentation, I was personally forced to stop and think like what it actually has been in our whole journey for the 14 years, having a professional board. And I mean, we would never be here without a professional board supporting us. And like, maybe to put it in a nutshell, the board has always been like 10 years ago, our core team, we would never have imagined that we would be here today where we are as a company. Never, ever. But obviously the board saw it. They would not have been our board members if they didn't believe in something that we actually didn't know a potential that existed in us as a team. So in a way, it's for me, it's a type of coaches. Maybe it's way more than just coaches that kind of like help me and our whole team to grow as leaders and grow as professionals and reach a level of performance and potential that we like didn't know exists in us. So very good question. Thanks, Matti.
Well, in addition to Inderes having a more internationally skewed target market, obviously now the board is more international as Helena joined. How will the internationalization of the board affect its organization and work?
We'll have to see, but Tero already proposed that the independent members will be speaking Swedish from this moment onwards. We have 3 native speakers and we have 2, me and Tero, not so native speakers. But we'll make an effort.
Det går bra.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the shareholders? Heikki is bringing over a mic.
Joo, yhtiökokous haukkaili Tomilahti äänessä ja mä kentältä toisin sellaisen terveisen, siis puhutaan, että mä oon monta yhtiökokousta käynyt ja että siellä vähän pienemmät yhtiöt niin valittelee likviditeetin puutetta ja mä en tiedä, lupaatteko te niin teidän palveluilla myös niin paranevaa likviditeettiä osakkeen kaupankäynnin suhteen vai miten tämä tarina menee, kun mulla on se pelko, että ne saattaa jossain vaiheessa ruveta miettimään, että mistä me maksetaan, kun osake ei liiku mihinkään niin kuin kumpaankaan suuntaan. Ja itse asiassa tämä teidän oma osake on esimerkki siitä, että mä katsoin äsken, oli vaihtoa 77 kappaletta yhtiökokouspäivänä. Ja Joakimille tiedoksi, että mistä sä ne ostat ne osakkeet sitten, jos tämä vaihto on näin niin kuin teidänkin firmalla, joka on kassavirtakone ja muuta. Tämä on niin kuin ehkä laajempi kysymys, mutta tällaista ääntä on kuulunut, kun on käynyt kokouksissa, että olisi kiva saada niin kuin likviditeettiä ja uusia sijoittajia, varsinkin pienimmille firmoille. Onko tämä ideoita tällaisesta?
So heard through the grapevine, there's a lot of talk on the field, especially with regards to small to mid-cap companies in terms of low liquidity for the stock. And I suppose the question was around, do we promise higher, increased liquidity to our client companies as well, and kind of Inderes itself, the Inderes stock was used as an example of low liquidity. There was 77 shares on the market today on the annual general meeting day.
Well, I can start and we can take a few add-ons. And the liquidity is a problem for many small caps, and not just in Finland, but across. And in a way, the sign of the times is past 2 years doesn't help. It's also a lot to do with how people feel about stock investing in general, and it's been much more passive, and smaller companies are always more hardly hit than maybe some of the big companies that trade every day. I don't think Inderes should be promising anything. I don't think we should be promising liquidity. We promise to disseminate information. We promise to be the link between the investors and the companies. And liquidity is probably an equation of multiple dimensions. It is the sentiment on how people are feeling about investing in general. It is the equity story. It's the credibility of the business or attractiveness of the business. It's the credibility of the management, and it's the communication, IR, and what sort of information is available, your CMD and your reports. It's multitude things, and in a way, what we could say as Inderes is that, do you think you should communicate more or less if you want liquidity? And I think that response is rather clear, even though there are no silver bullets in a way, tenfold in liquidity overnight. Yes, please.
Yeah, I can tackle Tommy's question with very hard scientific evidence, actually. There's a study in Aalto University that covered, I think it was 6,500 Inderes recommendation changes and report publishments, and over 10 years. And that study found statistically significant evidence of improving liquidity, increasing amount of owners, and increasing price formation of the pricing of the stock in that study. So there is statistical evidence to it, but within that sample, we can't promise it for an individual company. In the big picture, we know that if you have a lot of information available about the company and investors can trust that information, then it's more likely that they will trade. But if you don't have information available and investors don't trust your information, then of course it's quite likely that people won't trade. Then it also goes down to how the company is actually performing. So if you're continuously producing very poor, disappointing results, then like speeding up investor relations and so on rarely improves the liquidity. But we've seen that many of our clients who have been struggling for years and years, they still stick to our service because they find that it's also in difficult times really important to continue communicating with their shareholders and investors to keep their trust. So that's how I would put it.
Any more questions? I thought I saw one. Yes.
I can try to do this in English. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexander Ekrias, and my question is that now that Inderes is becoming more and more international, should the main language be English? I mean, in the reports, in all the interviews and stuff like this, just to make it more efficient. I know you have been considering this, but that's just a question.
Well, I suggested I take it, so I take it. Well, I guess I'm a natural person to answer that question because I've been working for 11 years writing equity research in English. I think you only can really truly globally scale if you use English as a language. So if we would ever really want to become global Inderes, which is a fantastic dream, by the way, if you think of it, global community, well, that's a vision, isn't it? Well, then English will be a must. But then at the same time, it's been a competitive advantage in these early stages, and for the time being, it probably will remain so in our native country, Finland, but to some extent also in other Nordic countries. So I think, yes, we will, in the long run, we will be moving into that direction. But then it's a question of speed and also whether to drop the local languages or not. My current hunch would be not at the moment. So I think that's all I can say about that.
Go ahead.
A few thoughts. So I think the challenge with internationalization is how do you get the global scale benefits that you want, but also remain hyper-local? And hyper-local, for me, means you meet the audience's need. Do you serve them in the way they like to be served? And I do believe there are some learnings from the Finnish market that Finnish investors liked to be served in the Finnish language. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's actually both. And finding the way of combining that in a sensible way is probably a good theme for the future years.
Probably all of the long reports will be in English, or most of them, or at least in several languages, English and the local language. So anybody can read. But then if the Swedish team finds a very interested Finnish company, their local evangelist and their local videos and interviews will be probably running in Swedish, but they will refer to the report. They will, in a way, bring that idea, that gem that the team found from Finland into the Swedish investors' awareness. And therefore, we will have, in a way, two languages working in parallel.
Something that this is something that the board has been talking a lot and putting pressure on the management, not always to their liking. So the board has tried to impose change here and failed. Not sure if that was a good thing. Probably it was. But one thing on the technology I would really like to add: we're not that far away from a 3PO. If you think of the Star Wars robot that said stupid things in many languages, or the other way around, that might be closer than you think. So then that question becomes not irrelevant, but it will be easier to manage. So that's definitely there when you combine that, especially with the artificial intelligence and these chatbots. Who knows, you might not need an analyst to do a rough version of a long report, initiation of coverage.
Helena, I'm actually curious to get your insights on this language question with regard to the Swedish market. Are there substantial benefits to publishing information in Swedish in Sweden?
I think in Sweden there is, when it comes to base information, it's probably fully possible to do it in English because most of that type of information is in English. I do think that a lot of the discussion that is happening today in communities and so forth is in local language. However, I'm with you. I think that the language barrier is starting already to disappear, and that there are becoming sort of automatic ways of, I don't use Star Wars, but the babblefish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that you put in your ear and then you can do all the languages. But when in the digital world, quite a lot will actually be possible to do with sort of automatic translation. So there will be ways of bridging, but there is definitely a local element. Absolutely.
Kyselytuulella niin voisin sitten onnitella sitten yhtiökokouspalvelusta, että siinähän on tilanne niin, että ennen koronaa niin käytännössä Euroclear oli monopoli ja nyt tuntuu, että te olette siinä niin kuin vaihtanut osia. Eli useimmat ilmoitukset, mitä mäkin olen tänä keväänä tehnyt, niin se menee teidän kautta tai siinä ei teidän nimeä näy, vaan näkyy tämä IR Innovatix, joka on ilmeisesti, onko tämä nyt teidän alihankkija vai minkälainen sopimus teillä on niiden kanssa? Ja sitten onko tämä kopioitavissa Ruotsiin suoraan, koska siellähän tuntuu vielä, mihin mä oon ilmoittautunut niihin kokouksiin, niin Euroclear on se paikka, mikä on se ensisijainen ilmoittautumispaikka.
First of all, congratulations on the AGM service. It seems that a couple of years ago, Euroclear was the bona fide monopoly in the market, and now the tables have turned. The parts have switched to some degree, at least with regards to Finland. Can this model be sort of blueprinted and taken to Sweden? Because in Sweden, it seems that Euroclear is still somewhat in a monopoly position.
Yeah, first of all, this market, like if there are, in the capital markets, if there are structures that are not efficient and monopolistic, of course we enjoy breaking them up for the benefit of the ecosystem companies and investors. So that's a great proof of that. Yes, we've kind of like become quite strong in Finland, I'd say. We've worked together with Innovatics, who is a subcontractor to us, taking part of some of the processes related to delivery of those services, and we have a really good relationship with Innovatics. I can't go here into details of our contracts or anything like that, but it's a good and healthy relationship that we have. When it comes to Sweden, we've delivered the first pilot AGM there. So it's proven. We've delivered the first pilot in Denmark as well. To scale up that operation in a new market like Sweden, yes, it's an interesting opportunity, but it's a very complex product with a lot of legislation stuff, a lot of traditions, and so on. So and you need quite a lot of local resources and knowledge to take on that market. So it's not kind of like a push of a button software scale to a new market. We need to build up quite a bit our local capabilities to start really ramping up the AGM product in Sweden. Long term, we do have those capabilities, and the fact that we have a really strong events business in Sweden in place is actually a great foundation to start building the AGM part of it, because AGM and event business, I mean, it's a collaboration of those two products. This is our event team doing the production, the whole event, the streaming. It's streamed on our own video streaming platform on which you have the voting and so on. And then we have the AGM team all working together. So the fact that we're so strong already in Sweden in the events business gives a good foundation to start expanding there. But I remind the team that like the AGM part, this is AGMs used to be run in one way the 100 years. And then after COVID, now that's the next 100 years. And we're in the first years of the next 100 years. So we need to think this as a 100-year business. And with that perspective, we're really early days.
Yeah, of course, AGM is something that every company has to do by law. And then there's the element of technology. You have the streaming, you have the voting, you have the registration and all of that. But then I think also the other question is that what do we do with the AGM concept in general going forward? Do we want to spend the 1.5 hours or 3 hours just discussing who are the scrutinizers of the minutes and who are the vote counters? Or are we using the time somehow more efficiently in collaborating with the shareholders a little bit, for instance, Berkshire Hathaway style? This is a little bit what we're trying to do here at the moment, but also looking for your input as well. I think we need to make AGMs great again. Maybe they were great 100 years ago, but they have been quite boring for the past 90 years. Tommy, you can maybe concur.
Okay, we have less than 5 minutes, so enough time for one more question if one rises up. I thereby conclude this question and answer. Okay, go ahead.
I might actually want to say something to Joachim. Actually, a couple of things. Firstly, congratulations to the new members. The second one to you is I'm honored to hand over the vice chairmanship to you. So that's a great honor to hand it over to such a well-known and respected financial professional. But what I really wanted to say, and why I opened my mouth, is that I was worried when I came here a bit late that I might be overdressed with a tie. And now you are sharing the burden of wearing the first tie, I believe, in AGMs of Inderes. So,
I did a bow tie last year. So if that counts, I guess it doesn't.
I need to
So
comment.
thank you for that.
I need to comment on that. Thank you, first of all. And I can see that you're happier than I've ever seen you before. A burden must have been lifted from your shoulders now that I'm taking over the vice chairmanship. So thank you for those congratulations. And regarding the shirt, I never wear pink shirts, but it was Mr. Tero Vekrut who said that the board should wear pink shirts. Yes, yes.
I sent him the link to our website of the board members' pictures, and then my quote was, there is a pattern. And he thought that was a order. It was not an order, it was a link.
Suggestion. This was absolutely heartwarming and amusing and very informative all at the same time. So I thank you, our dear board members. Thank you, our lovely shareholders. Thank you for attending both the official AGM and this question and answer session. It was an honor and a privilege to serve as your host and the chairman for the meeting. So now I hereby conclude this question and answer session.